When my grandson said I'd be more comfortable in a nursing home, with my daughter standing silently in the living room of the house I built, I didn't say a word. I went upstairs, opened my filing cabinet, and by the next week, the deed was no longer in his name. A true story from Austin, Texas. Betrayal had to be punished. Justice had to be restored. My name is Henry. I'm 76, a retired carpenter who built homes for others his whole life. Wood never betrays. People do. This is my story, a tale of family betrayal and noble revenge. Before we continue this story, make sure you subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from, with your morning coffee or late at night. It helps this story reach more people who love powerful revenge stories like this one. Let's begin. The house smelled like cedar and coffee, the way Sundays are supposed to. Sunlight slid across the photo wall where 50 years of my life hung level and true. Weddings, birthdays, the quiet victories people forget to clap for. My grandson Owen, 28, stood by the fireplace, thumbs working his phone, eyes somewhere I didn't live. He used to be my shadow with a toy hammer. Now I was an obstacle between him and the future he thought he deserved. My daughter Carol hovered near the kitchen, arms crossed like a fence she didn't have the courage to claim as hers. She pretended to check the roast. She pretended not to know. Owen didn't look up when he said it. "Grandpa, we've been thinking you'd be more comfortable in a nursing home." The words fell like sawdust into a fresh cut, soft everywhere and impossible to ignore. I kept my voice steady. "What?" He finally looked at me. "It's safer, cleaner, you'll have help. This place is too big for you now." I stared at the oak beams I had cut, sanded and lifted with my own hands half a century ago. "You think I can't live in the house I built?" "It's not about that," he said, shrugging. "It's just practical." Carol added a spoonful of sugar to her voice. "Dad, we want what's best for you." "What's best?" I asked, "or what's easiest?" Silence filled the room like dust after a cut. Floating, choking, visible in the light. I smiled the way you do in hospital hallways. "Of course," I said, standing. "Whatever makes you comfortable." On the surface, I surrendered. But inside, a different plan was already forming. I took the stairs slowly, one hand on the rail I'd planned smooth in 1974. Each creak sounded like an old friend, whispering the same warning. Don't give them this house without a fight. My upstairs office smelled of varnish and late afternoons. The metal filing cabinet sat where it always had, a heavy memory with drawers. Inside lived my real past, black ink, raised seals, signatures that outlived arguments. I opened the folder marked H. Turner, Property Holdings, Austin. The 2016 quitclaim peeked up like a foolish grin. Owen had called it tax planning. I'd called it trust. His name sat beside mine. I traced it with my thumb until the paper wrinkled at the edge. A man can be proud and wrong at the same time. I pulled a yellow pad from the drawer and wrote 3 words across the top in block letters. Reclaim, restore, remind. Wood never betrays. People do. Wood only tells you if you measure right. I spread the papers across the desk like a map of bad decisions. Somewhere in the tangle, the truth waited to be cut free. Outside, the live oaks moved their slow old arms. The house sounded awake. Carol stayed for dinner and set plates like apologies. Owen ate fast, eyes on his phone, chewing through my patience. "The home I mentioned has openings next week," Carol said. "It's close by. They have woodworking activities." "Woodworking," I said. "That's cute. You won't have to mow, clean gutters, any of that," Owen added. "You'll have your own room, TV, it'll be good." I looked around the dining room. Table I carved, chairs I pegged, crown molding I lifted with a pulley when no one else showed. "And this house?" "We'll rent for a while," Carol said too quickly. "Maybe sell later. To cover your care." That was the nail driven too deep, head snapped off, leaving a scar you can't sand out. I stood, the room as quiet as a shop at closing. "You two finish dinner," I said. "I've got something to put in order." Owen laughed without joy. "What now, Grandpa?" "Just a list," I said. "Things I should have measured years ago." Their forks clinked in the kitchen while I climbed the stairs. Funny how noise shrinks when people believe they've already won. Under the desk lamp, the past turned bright. Deed copies. Mortgage payoff. The 1979 survey I drew myself. Lines straight as promises. I set them in rows. Foundation first, wall second, roof last. Tucked near the back, I found a will revision signed with Clara, still alive and stubborn. Right of survivorship for me, language clean and proud. Owen's later edition lived on a separate sheet. Recorded, yes, but sloppily, like greed in a hurry. I dialed lawyer Mr. Jenkins, who'd handled my estate since Clinton put his feet on the desk. He answered on the third ring. "Henry, trouble?" "Not yet," I said. "But if a man tries to move me out of my own house, I consider that the blueprint." He cleared his throat the way men do when they stop being friendly and start being useful. "Bring what you have at 9. We'll measure twice." I looked at the clock, 11:47 p.m., and poured coffee strong enough to stand on. In the margin of my pad, I added a fourth word in pencil, faint but necessary: reveal. I stacked the documents into a neat bundle that made a thud when it landed in my briefcase. Paper can be heavier than timber if you know where to put the weight. Morning stretched thin across the yard when Owen showed up unannounced, swagger where humility should live. He found me on the porch oiling the hinges. "Grandpa, about the move, think of the stairs," he said, pointing like a real estate brochure. "We worry." I nodded at the gutter line. "You noticed the sag over the east corner?" He squinted, faking focus. "Knew we should have replaced that." "We?" I said, letting the word hang. "Funny, I don't recall you on a ladder since the birdhouse days." He shifted. "I was going to call someone." "I've got quotes." "Quotes for gutters," I said, "but not for insurance. Did you renew the dwelling policy you insisted on managing when you got added to the title for tax purposes?" He hesitated. "It auto-renews." "Not when you file the wrong form," I said mildly. "But that's an easy fix, if you own the house." His cheeks flushed. "You're making this harder than it has to be." "No," I said. "I'm making it accurate." He left with a warning in his eyes and something like fear under it. I watched him drive away, then checked the mailbox out of habit. Bills, a catalogue, and a thin envelope from the county reminding owners about homestead verification, just in case anyone had been playing games with addresses. I slid the county letter into my briefcase, on top of the deed copies. Some tests you make with wood, others with paper. Either way, you learn where the rot is. Mr. Jenkins kept an office that smelled like old law and tobacco stories. The secretary still called me Mr. Turner, like it was a title I'd earned with a framing square. We laid my papers across his desk, squares on a chessboard. He read slowly, the way carpenters cut crowns. No second chances if you rush finally. He tapped the 2016 filing with his pen. Recorded under the wrong tenancy structure. Notarization is defective. The survivorship clause from the earlier instrument was never extinguished. In English? In English, he said, your grandson tried to move a load-bearing wall without a permit. The county never accepted the joist. I breathed out carefully. He continued, we'll prepare a corrective instrument and notice. Quiet title is a last resort. I don't think we'll need it. I don't want a scene, I said. I want it right, he nodded. Right is quieter than loud. We signed a retainer, ink clean, date sharp. He slid me a certified envelope addressed to Owen with a neutral subject line. Notice of record review. Mail this today, he said. Let the paper do the talking. On my way out, I asked the secretary for one more envelope. Heavy stock, red and blue stripes. The kind that arrives with its shoulders squared. In the lobby, I sealed the flap and pressed it flat with my palm. When you're right, you don't need to raise your voice. You just need a clear stamp. Twilight made the house look younger, the way soft light treats old faces. The phone rang with Carol on the line, breath tight. Owen says you've been digging up documents. Just checking my measurements, I said. You didn't have to embarrass him. He did that himself, I replied. I'm only rebuilding what he tried to demolish. Silence settled in, not cruel, just necessary. Dad, she said softer, what happens now? Now, I said, looking at the table where Clara's rocking chair still kept its corner. I build something without nails. Lessons hold better when you can't pry them out. I hung up and set my briefcase on the desk. I wrote the words in a single column, bold and true. Reclaim, restore, remind, reveal. Under them, I drew a small box, the kind you check when the work is done. I drove to the post office after dark, the truck humming like it still owed me a favor. Inside, the fluorescent lights were cruel to everybody, which felt fair. I slid Jenkins's certified envelope addressed to Owen across the counter. The clerk weighed it, stamped it, and sent it down a belt into the bright, indifferent machinery that makes things official. I slid a second envelope, addressed to the Travis County Clerk Records Intake. Into the after-hours drop, the metal door clapping shut like a gavel. Outside, the Texas night hummed low and steady. The moon caught the courthouse flag just enough to prove there was wind even when you didn't feel it. I watched the red accepted light blink on the intake slot and took a deep breath. Tomorrow, I told the dark. We measure again. The plan was no longer an idea, it was in motion. The first blow had been measured. The next was ready to be delivered. The morning sun painted long stripes across the porch railings I'd sanded decades ago. I stepped outside with my coffee, the same mug Clara gave me on our 30th anniversary, and breathed in a morning that still belonged to me. Inside my pocket sat the official deed, Henry Turner, sole owner, folded with the precision of a blueprint. It wasn't just paper. It was proof that my labor, sweat, and patience had weight. Yesterday was preparation. Today's confrontation. At 8 sharp, the doorbell rang. Owen stood there with a stack of papers and no apology in sight. His face was red, jaw set, the arrogance of someone convinced he'd been wronged by justice itself. "You can't just take the house," he barked. "I didn't take it," I said evenly. "I kept it." He shoved the papers toward me. "This says otherwise." I glanced at the outdated filing and handed it back. "That's the version where you filed it wrong. You might want to visit the county clerk's office before you start shouting on my porch." His lip twitched. "You had no right—" "I had every right," I interrupted. "I built this place, paid for every brick, and the only thing I gave you freely was trust, which you traded for leverage." The silence that followed was heavier than oak. Owen turned and stormed down the steps, the papers fluttering in his grip. I closed the door gently, not with anger, but with certainty. When you're in the right, you don't need volume. The law speaks louder than any voice. That afternoon, Mr. Jenkins called. "Henry," he said, "expect visitors. Owen's trying to contest the transfer." "Let him," I replied. "He's arguing with his own mistakes." Jenkins chuckled, the sound of an old man who's seen fools dig their own holes. I sent him a formal notice this morning, detailed every clerical error and the invalid notarization. Legally, his claim is sawdust. "Good," I said. "Sometimes holding nothing teaches a person what something means." After we hung up, I walked to my workshop and taped a fresh note above the bench. Project, restoration tools, truth, time, patience, goal. Teach the boy what a foundation feels like when it shifts. The words steadied me. This wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about balance, about teaching a man that age doesn't mean weakness and patience isn't surrender. I sharpened my carpenter's pencil and slipped it into my pocket beside the deed. The next cuts would be precise. No wasted strokes. The next day, Carol knocked softly, the kind of knock people use when they know they're on shaky ground. She looked tired, eyes rimmed red from sleepless nights or shame, and maybe both. "Dad, Owen's upset," she began. "He says you blindsided him." I poured her coffee and gestured toward the kitchen table. "Tell me, Carol, when he suggested that nursing home nonsense, did you know what he'd done with the deed?" She hesitated, then lowered her gaze. "He said it was a formality, that you agreed years ago. And you believed him?" Tears welled. "I wanted to. Wanting to believe doesn't make something true," I said gently. She wiped her eyes. "He's ashamed. He didn't think you'd fight back. That's the problem," I said. "He's never seen me fight without shouting." She reached for my hand. "He's not a bad person, Dad, just lost." "Then he's lucky," I replied, "because lost things can still be found." When she left, she hugged me tighter than she had in years. Shame might spread quickly, but so can love, if you give it space to grow. 2 mornings later, a white pickup rolled into the driveway, Hawthorne Appraisal Services stenciled on the door. A man in khakis and wire-rimmed glasses stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Turner," he said, "I'm here to conduct a property appraisal." Order placed by Owen Turner. I smiled thinly. "He's a little behind on his reading." The man shifted uneasily. "Should I continue?" "Go ahead," I said. "Measure whatever you like. Just make sure the report lists the legal owner correctly. Henry Turner." He blinked, unsure if I was joking. I wasn't. When he left, I walked back inside and dialed Jenkins. "Time for step 2, I said. "Public notice. You're sure?" He asked. "Yes," I said. "If the boy wants an audience, I'll build a stage." 2 days later, the Austin Tribune carried a short legal announcement on page 5, notice of title reinstatement. Henry Turner has lawfully re-established full ownership of property at 407 Paloma Drive, Austin, Texas as of October 14th. Quiet words, loud consequences. And louder still were the whispers that began in the neighborhood before the ink had dried. By Friday, another car pulled into the drive, a bright red sedan and a young woman in heels stepping out, tablet in hand. "Hi," she chirped. "I'm Alyssa from Longhorn Realty. Owen scheduled a listing shoot today." "No, he didn't," I said calmly. "And you don't have permission to be on this property." She blinked, confused. "But he said—" I reached into my pocket and unfolded the certified deed. "Read the owner line," her cheeks flushed. "Oh, I see. I'll cancel the appointment immediately." "You do that," I said. "And tell Owen the next time he tries to sell something, he ought to own it first." When she left, I followed her to the curb, watching her car shrink into the distance. The next morning, the whispers turned into murmurs. Bill from down the street stopped by the fence. "Heard Owen tried to sell your house," he said. "Word is the county clerk set him straight. Rose brought a pie that afternoon. She always bakes when the gossip's fresh. He's been driving around like a man who lost the map to his own life," she said. "Maybe he'll find a new one," I replied. "Some people need to lose their footing before they learn how to stand." I sliced into the pie, the crust warm and flaking. Revenge tastes best when served with quiet civility. By midweek, the legal notice had done its work. Owen's calls stopped. His texts turned frantic. Then came the voicemail, voice cracked, small, unfamiliar. "Grandpa, I messed up. Please call me. I need to talk." I didn't delete it, not yet. But I didn't return the call either. Later that day, a letter arrived from First State Bank of Austin. Owen had attempted a refinance and failed. The denial was brutal in its simplicity. Application rejected due to lack of verified ownership and suspicious trust fund withdrawals. Further review pending. The last line caught my eye. Further review pending. That's when I knew this wasn't just about a house anymore. The floor beneath Owen was starting to crack. And this time, there'd be no safe landing. I placed the letter on my desk, laid my carpenter's pencil across it, and wrote a new word beneath the list: repair. It wasn't just a goal anymore. It was the next phase, and he was going to feel every nail driven into place. The hammer on my workbench caught the afternoon light, casting a long, sharp shadow. Some tools are built, some teach, and some, when wielded by patience, change everything. The next morning I was tightening the hinges on the old porch door when the phone rang. Helene from First State Bank introduced herself with the kind of polite tone banks use when they're about to deliver bad news. "Mr. Turner," she said, "I'm calling about some irregular activity on your property." I wiped my hands on a rag. "Go ahead. It appears your grandson, Owen Turner, attempted to refinance 407 Paloma Drive. However," she paused as if tasting the next words. "The title search confirmed he is not the legal owner. His application has been denied." "Thank you," I said calmly. "I appreciate thorough banking. Would you like documentation of the denial for your records?" "Yes," I said. "Send it directly to me." When I hung up, I stared at the workshop wall where Clara's photo hung, her smile steady as ever. He'd tried to mortgage my home, as if paper could rewrite history. As if a signature could erase sweat. I added a fifth word beneath my list: report, because now the truth wasn't just mine, it was stepping into daylight. The hammer on my bench gleamed in the Texas light. Some men build with them, others need to feel their weight before they understand what they're for. By Thursday, the whispers were no longer whispers. They were conversations at mailboxes and fence lines. Bill, my neighbor 2 doors down, leaned on the fence and cleared his throat. "Henry," he said carefully, "word is your grandson's in a bind. Tried selling your place, then ran into the county clerk's buzzsaw." I nodded. "People should read before they sign." Bill chuckled nervously. "The Tribune said you reinstated your title." "That's poetic." "I'm a carpenter," I said. "We don't write poems. We write in lumber and ink." Later that day, Rose from across the street brought over a pecan pie, the kind she only bakes when the whole street's talking. "He's been driving around like a ghost," she said. "Like he's lost something bigger than a house." "Maybe," I said. "Some people need to lose their footing before they learn how to stand." By evening, the whispers had gone digital. I opened my laptop and found a neighborhood forum post titled "Turner Property Dispute, a Cautionary Tale." Hundreds of views. Dozens of comments. Most were on my side. I closed the screen slowly. This was no longer a private reckoning. It was a lesson the whole town was watching. I took another bite of Rose's pie and smiled faintly. Justice, when seasoned with patience, has a flavor all its own. Friday evening brought an unexpected visitor, Alyssa, the young realtor, back again. This time there was no tablet, no camera crew, just nervous eyes and a clipboard clutched too tightly. I wanted to apologize in person, she said. I should have verified ownership before scheduling that shoot. No apology needed, I said. You were following orders, she hesitated. Not anymore. Owen came to our office again this morning. When I told him he wasn't the owner, he threw a chair. I raised an eyebrow. He once built birdhouses. Now he breaks furniture. She bit her lip. He said some things. Angry things. But he also mentioned taking money from the trust your late wife set up for renovations. My heartbeat slowed. Renovations? One of my co-workers used to date him. She says there were no renovations, just casino charges and credit withdrawals. The room tilted slightly. This wasn't about entitlement anymore. It was about theft. Theft from Clara's memory, from her legacy. Thank you, I said quietly. You did the right thing telling me. She nodded and left, her car pulling away into the dusk. I stood at the window long after her taillights disappeared. Owen hadn't just betrayed me. He'd desecrated something sacred. And for that, the hammer would fall harder. 2 days later, the denial letter Elaine promised arrived. Thick envelope, embossed seal. I slit it open with my pocket knife, the way I used to open bundles of lumber invoices. Inside, the words were cold and official. Application rejected, due to lack of verified ownership and misuse of trust funds. Attached was a handwritten note from Mr. Jenkins. A financial advisor requests a meeting. Strongly suggest attending, Horn quietly. I laid the denial letter next to my old wedding photo. Clara smiled from inside the frame. That small half grin she gave me whenever I was about to fix something bigger than a wall. Wish you could see this, love, I whispered. Patience is paying its bills. Later that afternoon, I drove to the post office and mailed a notarized notice of intent to audit the trust fund, a step I never thought I'd take against my family. But then again, I never thought my family would steal from Clara's heart. Outside, thunder rolled across the hills. Storms always come before peace, and this one was just beginning. Monday morning arrived grey and heavy. I stepped into Jenkins's office, and there he was. Owen, slouched in a chair, his tie crooked, eyes red from too many sleepless nights. Grandpa, he said, voice small. You didn't have to do this, I didn't reply. I let the silence stretch until it buckled under its own weight. Jenkins cleared his throat. Owen, we're here to discuss ownership clarification and misuse of trust funds. I just needed help. Owen burst out. I was drowning in debt. You thought you'd sell my house, I interrupted. The one I built board by board while raising your mother. His face crumpled. I thought you'd be gone soon anyway. The words hit harder than any hammer. They were the kind of sentence that doesn't bruise skin. It bruises legacy. Mr. Turner, Jenkins said carefully, do you wish to file a civil claim for fraud? I studied Owen. His hands trembled, pride shattered. All that remained was fears and a chance. No, I said finally. Not yet, Jenkins nodded. Some men settle disputes with lawsuits. I preferred lessons that couldn't be appealed. 2 days later, at the monthly community board meeting, the consequences grew legs. Owen was a no-show. Carol sat in the back row, cheeks blotched and swollen from crying. When the chairwoman asked if I'd still donate wood for the senior center renovation, I stood slowly. Yes, I said, but this time I'll deliver it myself. No middlemen. Polite applause followed. Carol stared at the table in front of her, unable to lift her eyes. After the meeting, she walked with me to the parking lot. Dad, he's falling apart, she whispered. He's talking about leaving town. Everyone knows. Let him, I said softly. Sometimes you have to lose everything before you understand what you had. Tears welled in her eyes. Do you hate him? No, I said. But I needed him to feel what he tried to make me feel. Small, powerless, replaceable. She nodded slowly. He does now. That night when I returned home, the voicemail light blinked again. Owen's voice cracked through the speaker. Grandpa, I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. Please, can we talk? I didn't delete it. I didn't reply either. Instead, I looked at the calendar on the kitchen wall and circled Sunday in red ink. The same day I'd built my first house. The same day I'd buried Clara. The day I would decide what came next. I folded my hands, the house creaking gently around me. Sunday, I whispered. That's when the real work begins. Let me pause for a moment. If you've stayed with me this far, you feel this betrayal the way I do. Tell me in the comments, would you forgive or would you fight back? And while you're here, subscribe and share this story with someone who's felt the same kind of pain. Because what comes next will change everything. He thought this was over. He hadn't yet learned that the hardest part of building isn't the framing. It's the finish. Dawn broke the way good lumber splits. Clean, inevitable. I sat on the porch with sandpaper in my hand, smoothing a block of cedar out of habit more than need. The final stage of any build is inspection. And today, Owen's character was on the block. The phone rang. Owen. I let it buzz twice, then answered. He breathed like a man carrying a sack of wet concrete. I don't know what to say, he whispered. Then listen, I said. You tried to erase me from my own house. But what you really erased was respect. I was drowning, he said. I panicked. Drowning isn't theft, I replied. Panic isn't permission. He went quiet. Trucks hummed on the far road. A bird scratched the fence post and thought better of it. Come tomorrow, I said. No lawyers. 7 o'clock. You, me, and what's true. I hung up and set the cedar block aside. Smooth enough. The next cut would be human. That afternoon I cleaned the house the way Clara used to before company. A ritual more than a chore. Fresh linens. Lemon oil on the table. Windows open just enough to let the oaks speak. I set 2 plates, 2 forks, and 2 glasses. On the table, the deed lay centered with a sharpened carpenter's pencil across it like a plumb line. Beside it, the crooked blue birdhouse we built when Owen was 9. Imperfect, loved, unthrown. I breathed in the old familiar scent and let the moment arrive, the smell of polish and peace in the air. It didn't belong to words yet, just to the room. I glanced at Clara's chair and nodded once. Sit close, I said to memory. I planned to be patient. The doorbell rang at 7 sharp. Owen stood there with nothing in his hands and less in his posture. He came in quietly, like the air itself had weight. It looked smaller, he said, eyes drifting over the walls he once painted. No, I said. You just tried to make it yours without earning it. He swallowed and followed me to the dining room. We sat. The clock ticked like a metronome, teaching 2 people how to speak on time. I don't deserve a seat here, he said. You don't, I answered. But you're in it. Make the sitting count. He kept his eyes down, the birdhouse in his periphery like a memory refusing to be ignored. We ate in clean silence. Halfway through, I lifted the deed and set it between us. The paper cast a straight-edged shadow that looked like a dividing line. Do you know what this is? I asked. He nodded. What you took back? No, I said. What I never gave away. He stared at the pencil, then at me. I thought papers were power. People are power, I said. Paper is only honest when the people are. His shoulders slumped. He reached for the birdhouse and turned it in his hands, thumb following the crooked nail line. You kept this? He asked. I don't throw away imperfect things, I said. That's what family is supposed to mean. He pressed his lips together, eyes glassy. The pencil rolled an inch toward him, as if the room itself had an opinion. I leaned back. Tell me why you thought care meant control. He blinked, surprised by the phrasing. Because control feels safe, he said. If I owned the house, I could fix the fear, the debt, the feeling that everything's sliding. I nodded once. When did it start sliding? He looked past me, past the room. The summer I worked your job site at 19, he said. You told me to measure a run of stairs. I got it wrong. The crew laughed. I felt small. I remembered the day. Hot as sin, sawdust stuck to sweat. I didn't laugh, I said. You didn't have to, he answered. I did it for you. We sat in the truth like 2 men in wet lumber, aware it might warp if we rushed it. He set the birdhouse down and squared it with the table edge. I thought if I could control something big, I'd stop feeling small, he whispered. So I took the wrong things. The house, the trust. I told myself I'd fix it before you noticed. I let the words be ugly and honest. That's not repair, I said. That's hiding the crack with paint. His eyes lifted. What does repair look like? Weight where weight belongs, I said. Load on the studs, not the drywall. Making it right without applause. Paying back what you took and showing up when it's inconvenient. He glanced at the deed, the birdhouse, the pencil. I watched him realize that every tool on the table had a job, and none of those jobs were shortcuts. I slid a single page across the table. At the top in my steady hand was written, Terms of Repair. He read silently, Restore every dollar to Clara's trust within 1 year. Donate 1 weekend a month at the Carpentry Training Center. No selfies. No announcements. Write Carol an apology. Not for me, for her. Visit Sundays. Not to take. To listen. His jaw tightened, not from anger, but from the feel of a load meeting its joist. You're not pressing charges? He asked. If I wanted punishment alone, I said, I'd have let the letters and banks finish the job. I want a foundation. He looked at me like a drowning man spotting a pier. I'll sign. Not with ink, I said. With your actions. I opened a small notebook and wrote on the first page, Restoration Ledger. Beneath it I ruled simple columns. Date was what was set right, hours each amount. Initial the page, I told him. Not a contract, an honest ledger. Every Sunday we add lines. His hand shook. He initialed. The letters weren't pretty, but they were his. I shut the notebook with a quiet thud. Paper again. Wait again. This time on the right beam. For the first time in months something had shifted, not in the paperwork but in the man across from me. After supper we stood on the porch. The night was wide and listening. Crickets stitched the dark together, thread by thread. Owen looked at the yard where we'd once set posts for a fence. I used to think fences kept things out, he said. They mark where you begin again, I answered. He turned to me, eyes wet but clear. I don't know how to make this right. You've started, I said. You came home. You told the truth. You lifted the load instead of kicking the stud. He swallowed. Do you? He couldn't finish it. I let the night hold the pause until it was ready. Then I nodded. Yes, I said. I forgive you. The word didn't arrive as a gift. It arrived as a decision. It didn't erase consequences. It set them in order. It didn't excuse. It released. He cried like the boy with the toy hammer, not the man with the wrong papers. I put a hand on his shoulder and let the weight settle where it belonged. Next Sunday, I said, bring your hammer. He laughed through tears. What are we fixing? The porch rail, I said, and a few other lines that got cut crooked. He nodded, wiping his face. I'll be here. He walked to his truck and paused. Grandpa. Yes. Thank you for not letting me get away with it. That's what love sounds like when it uses a ruler, I said. He drove off into a night that felt less empty than it did an hour ago. I sat on the swing and let the boards beneath my feet speak back, scarred, smooth, still holding. The clock in the living room chimed. The wind moved through the oaks like breath through old timbers. Somewhere the air still carried Clara's laugh, patient, steady. I raised my glass of sweet tea toward the stars. To forgive, I said softly, the only foundation that never cracks. The house settled around me, true square level, and for the first time in a long while, so did we. At the end, tell me how this story made you feel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like, and join the conversation. I read every single comment. Thank you for listening.